Hey everybody, welcome back to Author Etiquette. Today I have Nicholas Osborn, and he, by you can tell by his appearance, he's into the Western stuff, the cowboy stuff. Nicholas, introduce yourself to the Author Etiquette crowd, and tell us what you've been working on, what you're about to release.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first off, thanks, Travis, for having me on. I sure appreciate it. This is my debut contemporary Western novel coming with Wolfpack Publishing. So I'm just kind of getting into it, looking forward to, letting people read what I've been working on for a few years now to get this up and running. It's been a fun journey, and I'm really excited to kind of add a new voice into the Western genre because there's so much to be told there. There's so much a history and ways that we can tell these stories, and I think that there's a new push for something that readers are interested in for Western set in a contemporary time. Something that we can see the West is still alive. It's a culture and a lifestyle that is still happening today. So what I have
Yeah,
right
oh,
now,
I'd agree. I
yeah.
mean, no, go ahead.
So what I have is A Day Late and A Bullet Short. It's the first book in the Bullets trilogy, which is inspired, if some of the fans of Westerns might recognize the Dollars trilogy. So I've got a really heavily inspired genre take on a treasure hunt from a long dead outlaw. So the Wild West was filled with all these wild stories and tall tales, and I really built this book on the
Hmm.
idea of what if one of these tall tales was actually true? Because Wild Bill and all these characters and people that we know throughout history often exaggerated what they did in their tales of the Wild West. And when you read through them, you think there's no way any of this is true. So this story is really based on the
Hmm.
idea of, what if one of these wild and crazy tales of the Wild West was actually true? And it follows David Davy Patton as a park ranger in Deep East Texas. And he's kind of thrust into this treasure hunt by coming into contact with this mysterious woman named Rose. And she's on this adventure, she's on this journey, and she's been on this for a long time. And Davey kind of comes into it at a time when he's not really sure what he's doing with his life. He's a park ranger who's transferred into all these different parks, who's not sure what to do next, and really just at a crossroads in his life. And it picks up at a point where, he's thrust into this and he thinks, maybe this is the adventure I've been looking for. So we really hit the ground running, in the first chapter, and it doesn't slow down from there. So it's definitely a wild ride.
So is it at present day or near present day, or when does it take place?
Yes, sir. It's near present day with everything that we've got going on. So you can tell that it's got all the tropes that you want out of a western. It's got lots of gunfights, lots of six shooter action. I always said it's
Hmm.
six shooter field justice set in today. It's got a lot of that in it. It's a treasure hunt, so you know that there's some really great influences on taking us across the Texas landscape. One of the big influences I had, growing up in East Texas, everything you hear about Texas is always West Texas. That's where all the myth of the West is. That's where everybody
Yes.
wants to be. And growing up in East Texas, I wasn't always somebody who was super proud to be from the area. It took me a little while to come to terms with it and say, this is home and this is something that is actually really exciting. So what I wanted to do is say, there's so much history and so much lore here in East Texas. Can I build a story rooted in, the areas that are familiar to me and kind of mythologize it in a way that we've seen the West mythologized? So I can kind of tap into some of that and say, maybe for somebody like me who is in East Texas or an area where they're like, this isn't really for me, maybe, or I'm still getting used to it and I'm still getting coming to terms with it. It provides a chance for them to latch onto something and say, this is actually really cool. And this is something that, I'm familiar with. And it's something that I can look out in my backyard and see this awesome landscape, all this great scenery, and maybe have a bit more of an imagination of
Hmm.
some of the cool things that have happened in their area.
Well, yeah, I mean, if folks have been out to the Piney Woods and some of around Jacksonville, Texas, and things. It's really beautiful out there, and it's quite different than West Texas. And I think that's what's kind of cool about a Western is you can, anybody that's driven from North Carolina, Virginia out to California, you can tell as it gets gradually more west, things kind of open up a little bit. Towns a little further apart. The folks are a little different. And then you get out to West Texas and stuff. So essentially, I don't know of any book Western that has taken place in East Texas, really, other than what Bonnie and Clyde made it famous.
They did, and there is one Louis L'Amour book that touches on it a little bit. I was always inspired by
Mm,
his works. I grew up with my grandfather having a stack of Louis L'Amour novels on his bedside. And my father watched all the westerns. Always grew up with John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and all these figures of the West,
mm,
right? And we've seen an explosion of popularity in the contemporary Western or neo Western, kind of however you want to call the Western set in today. And
yeah,
Yellowstone really blew that up, got a lot of fans and all this stuff. But I think readers are really looking for something like that. I think that they're looking for a culture and something they can connect to that is their everyday life. And I'm leaning really heavily into
yeah.
that. But I'm also really inspired by the pulp of the Western myth. And I think that there's things that are just wild and crazy and hard to believe, and I pack all of that into this book. So as we kind of go on this treasure hunt for this
Yeah, I mean,
outlaw.
there's people still hunting for what the old Dutchman or the lost Dutchman mine or whatever, and
Yeah.
people are out west just trying to find all sorts of stuff about buried treasure or Billy the Kid. I mean, people say they're ancestor, but they can't. This guy died recently, what 1960 something or whatever. So he's Billy the Kid, but nobody knows really who he is other than he only had a few pictures.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's so much interest in that. And an author I follow, Ryan Coleman, just put out the new Billy the Kid novel. Shout out there is really fantastic. I'm digging into that now.
Hmm.
There's I really see a push for it, and I want to get in on this idea that the West isn't dead. And some of the main stories at the time,
No,
there were these dime novels that were huge, and you had all these characters that, they're kind of sensationalizing their own tales of the Wild West. And I was really fascinated with that as I kind of got started on this Bullets trilogy, because it's heavily inspired by, me coming to terms with being from East Texas, starting a family. My daughter now is almost 4 months old. It was our first, and I was kind of in that time when I was writing it. So legacy and
hmm,
family became a big influencing factor for it, and also just coming to terms with my own place in Texas and what I want to do and what I want my
right.
voice as an author to be. And this book kind of takes all of that
Yeah, I
into.
don't think there's enough. I don't think there's an Americana written,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Most of the novels that are written today, take place in Middle East or Afghanistan or Europe or somewhere outside of where you can actually read the book and go visit if you
right.
wanted to. Um, I do like that Americana type thing. I mean, when's the last good Western? Maybe the 318 to Yuma or whatever it's called, or
310 to Yuma,
something like that.
yes.
When's the last real good Western?
Yeah. Yep. And there are some great ones out there. Like I am inspired by, Kevin Costner stuff. I thought Open Range was awesome. There's so many good ones that, but a lot of them they are set in the 1800s, and I want to take this
Yeah.
idea of I live and work out at my family's cattle ranch. We do limousine show cattle. And it's something where, every morning when I'm feeding and cleaning the barn, I'm thinking, this lifestyle is still here and there's a ton of people in it. There's a community that if you're just online, you really don't see them. But you go to the Fort Worth Stock Show and there's thousands and thousands of people. And
Oh my
there's
goodness.
there's this
Yes.
community that you don't really, it's not as visible, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And to tap into that, I think that there are stories that really need to be told in that culture and in that lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Houston rodeo, right? Stock show and rodeo. I mean, it's huge. I mean, look, East Texas. I know that. I mean, they have a lot of. I guess it's hybrid wagyu, right there they're raising out there in East Texas. It's not really the wagyu. It's almost as expensive, but there's a
It
lot
is.
of stuff going on out there too
Yeah, absolutely.
from a ranching perspective.
It's a totally changing landscape, of course. And there's so much going into it. And I'm in this and I'm thinking, I've shown cattle, our family does it. We're a couple generations in, and I'm looking at the next generation with my daughter. We're kind of building this life and engaging in this culture that I'm thinking there's not enough out there. When I want to sit down when I get home at night and I want to read, I have to scroll through Goodreads and Amazon suggestions and social media and all these things to find, what I'm looking to read. And I always thought, if I write
Oh yeah.
something where if I walk into a bookstore and I pick it up and I'm like, I can't put this down, I have to buy it, that's what I want to write. So that's kind of where I
Mhm.
started with this. And Wolfpack Publishing just turned into a fantastic home. They put out so many awesome westerns, and I'm halfway through writing A Day Late and a Bullet Short, and I've already eyed Wolfpack Publishing to be like, this is a home for me. I know I can tell stories here, and I reached out to him, and we kind of we fell in stride there, and it's been really fantastic. So I'm looking forward to getting it out in the world and letting people check it out.
Excellent. So, what does it take to raise what is it called? A limousine cattle, or what is it? I mean, so they're not. So, I mean, some of the like the I think the winner of the stockyard, the cow or the the bull or whatever. Man, they can go for I mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people will buy them for restaurants where that you're buying that steak, you're paying a chunk.
Yeah, the market is, it's always up and down, but show cattle is there's a lot of money in it. It's like rodeo, and you pick up a rodeo horse, and you can spend anywhere from 10 to 100,000 more on them, and that's just
Yeah,
the way it works. And show cattle are like that. The steers run for pretty high when they sell. If you make the sale at your majors like Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Houston, they sell for quite a bit. But even at your local shows, if you sell them, they're bringing in a few thousand to get these kids supported and get them into college and whatever they want to do in their next step. So I'm always a big proponent of FFA and 4-H and
yep.
being involved in agriculture. And it's part of the lifestyle. It's part of the culture that
Oh yeah.
it's still going on. And I think that there's a big part of it. But what we do with they're called Limflex, and it's
Mhm.
a Angus and Limousine cross cattle. So what we have is a breeding program that we've been doing for 30 years, and getting the elite quality and genetics and EPDs and all these things that you want in a quality calf, and putting it out to market, and really succeeding with it. So we've had some success in the show ring. We're expanding into to direct to community beef and doing all these things, and living that life and doing that every day. It kind of makes you look around and wonder, what are the other parts of this lifestyle that you can't really find anywhere else? Everybody I talk to is like, of course I watch Yellowstone, but that's probably the only thing they're engaging with for entertainment, like that's there's not a lot that's catered to it.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I grew up on Gunsmoke and the Virginian and the Rifleman. I mean, I love those shows because they were, like especially Rifleman. It was like 30 minutes, but it was such a story compressed into 30 minutes. I mean, you almost knew the outcome, but it didn't matter because they're, who was fighting or whatever. That was so good that you just you'd be intrigued by it.
Oh,
And I had
absolutely.
a Johnny West doll when I was a kid, with a horse and everybody. I mean, I had the whole thing. I love that stuff. Right next to my GI Joes, So
Yep.
I dig that stuff. That's for sure. So, what made you start writing?
I think any author will tell you that writing is just something that you feel compelled to do. No matter what you're doing, you're kind of always trying to find a way to write, and that's kind of the same for me. I've always needed to write to some degree, so I've
Hmm.
done marketing, I've done journalism, kind of expanded into to every form of writing I could, even freelance writing.
Hmm.
It's something that I've known in the back of my head I wanted to write. I wanted to be a novelist, and I wanted to tell stories. So I've always been fascinated with stories, no matter where I've been, and that's something where deep down I'm just a fan. So no matter what, I'm a fan, and the Western genre has really attracted me because it is my life. And sitting down to write, I said I always feel better if I can write throughout the day. Anytime I stare down a blank document, I know I'm doing something right that day. And it's something that no matter what, you feel the urge where you kind of have to do it. And I think I've seen a lot of authors that have that same sentiment where, even growing up, it was something that as long as I'm writing, I'm usually doing okay. And being able to sit down and kind of finally put together a novel, because something I've also seen is hard to finish one, right? It's
It's
hard.
easy to start. I've started. I don't know. I got probably 30 in my thing. I started. I just can't.
Exactly. It's so hard to sit down and finish one. And I've dabbled in other stuff because I was always inspired by Tolkien, some fantasy also. Like there's all these authors that I've really enjoyed, and I'm the same page as you. I've got 100 documents started of novels that, I get 10,000 words, sometimes 40, 50,000 words in, and I'm like, this one's not it.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think
when
a
I,
lot of authors do that. I
yeah,
mean, a lot of authors. So, what do you find the most challenging? In the writing process, is it the beginning? Do you know the end already? Is it just filling in the blanks?
yeah, I actually explained to my wife the difference between a plotter and a pantser the other day because she had no idea what those terms referred to.
I didn't
I'm
either when I started writing.
Yep, yep. So it's like I said, look, I'm a plotter. So when I sit down, I
Okay,
say, what is the story that I'm going to tell? And that's really the biggest challenge because that's where I'm hammering out all my twists and turns, the ultimate point of the story, what kind of heart I'm putting into it. Do I have something to say other than this cool 5,000 word action scene that I need to inject into the story? And I figure all of those things out, and that's really where it's the most challenging because I'm hammering out the fine details. So my plotting process
right.
is I do an outline. I kind of start small. I open up a blank page and I write a sentence and I basically say, this is the story I want to tell. And with this, A Day Late and a Bullet
Hmm.
Short, it was basically I want to tell a treasure hunt story
I
inspired
love
by
that Tyler. I love that title.
I've gotten that. Thank you, sir. I've gotten a few, people saying that that's actually a really clever title. I had one guy say, people are going to read that and think, wow, why didn't I think of that?
That's a great title.
There's actually a funny story behind it because I work with my family's company here, and my grandfather came in and he was working on one of his old hot rods that he likes to do. And he said he came in and he had a part delivered, but he had already fixed the problem and he didn't need the part anymore. And he said that mailman, the guy who delivered it, was a day late and $1 short. And I looked over at him and I didn't say anything. And I ran home and told my wife. I opened the door and I said, a day late and a bullet short. And she was like, oh, there's your title. You're done. So that's how it came up. It's, and that was, I was pretty deep into the writing process then. My working title was Texas Rose because of, being near the Tyler area. And I kind of
Mhm.
him-hawed with that
Yep.
around and, wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do or not. But when that one clicked, it said the whole Bullets trilogy up. I had title for 2 and 3 already figured out. I knew what I wanted to do. And, part of that writing process, like I said, I start with a sentence and then I kind of break it out into a 3-act
Mhm.
structure to say, here's what I want my middle or my beginning, my middle, and my end to be. Here's kind of where I'm headed. And then what I found to be really helpful
Mhm.
is I go chapter by chapter. I say chapter one and I put a sentence in to say, here's kind of what I want to do in chapter one. And then I work my way through all the way until I get to what I feel like needs to be the end of that book. Because then I can say, I know I need to get here. I need to get to this point. So maybe in chapter
Right.
5 or chapter 7, maybe I need to put something in to set things up and I can set twists up. I'm a pretty unreliable writer whenever you're reading my work. So, I'll give you some twists and turns you may not expect. And I think that's part of the process. But figuring out, how I'm connecting the dots is usually the challenging part. So when I sit down to actually start writing the novel, I like to say it's like I've already seen the trailer to the movie, and now I get to watch the movie. So I know
Yeah,
kind of some of those beats,
yeah,
and now I can just dig into it and tell that story.
yeah. So people don't know Tyler, Texas, is the rose capital of the world.
Yes, sir.
So that's
That's it. And there's a
that's it.
awesome rose garden there. My wife
Yeah.
and I walked through. I've done the fair there, showing cattle before. Where we're at in East Texas, you got to drive an hour to the grocery store. So we're pretty familiar with the whole
Hmm.
area. You kind of just drive because that's the nature of the beast of living out here. So we go to Tyler to grocery shop and see a movie, and you just make a day out of it.
Now, when you're going to make a list, you make a list when you go shopping because ain't no going to Kroger down the street.
No, it's
That ain't
a
going to happen. So how does your wife and your daughter feel about you writing? It's like, are you done? Can you spend some time with me? Is that sort of thing.
there is the occasional, I have to do some writing, and that's a pretty common phrase at the house.
Yeah.
I have to do some writing, like that. If I've been working all day and I haven't had a chance to sit down, it happens in the evening. But she's so supportive of it. We've been together for 13,
Hmm.
14 years now. And she knows I've been
That
writing
helps.
since I met her. Yeah, she knows the deal. And
Hmm.
she'll come home and be like, I know you need to write. Here's some time. And kind of, let me get into it and let me because I set word counts. I
Yep.
know, my benchmarks, what I need to hit that day,
Okay.
and I'm pretty formulaic like that. So I know, when I'm going to finish a book, I need to be pretty firm on my deadlines. So sometimes the word counts. It's getting 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I hadn't hit my word count. I need to hammer out some time. Sometimes now, as we learned
Hmm.
with the newborn coming into an infant, well, they don't care about your schedule. They don't care about your word count. So you
Heck
do what
no.
you can and then fit it in.
It's their schedule.
Yeah.
So how old's your daughter?
She is almost 4 months now. So she
Oh,
is,
okay. That's your only child.
yep, that's our first one. Took us over a decade to decide we wanted to
What
have a kid, and we jumped right into it.
us too. Us
Really?
too. So wait till she goes to school and she goes, "Oh, my daddy's a writer," or she's older. She goes in the library and there's your book, you know, or books, probably books. So that's pretty
Absolutely.
cool.
That's something I'm really excited about. And when I was talking with Wolfpack Publishing, I said, look, I did write this in mind because we're going through that process where we decided we want to grow our family. I said, regardless of, if it's a boy or a girl, they're going to sit down and read this book and learn a little bit about their dad through it. And so it
Yep.
became important,
Oh yeah.
halfway through the book to say, do I have something to say to even my kid who's going to sit down and read this one day? And what are they going to learn about me through it? And the
Yeah.
importance of
So
legacy really came through that.
no. So no, that's perfect. You want them to be able to read it and be proud of it, right?
Right.
So are you or any manifestation of you or anybody you know in the book?
There are some characters that I am familiar with at least. I don't think that you can be an author and not be inspired
All
by the
right.
people you interact with.
It'd be impossible.
It really is. There's one character in particular that Davy works with at the Dangerfield State Park, which, if you haven't been to Dangerfield, it's about an hour and a half north of us. It's northern East Texas,
Hmm.
piney woods everywhere as far as the eye
Hmm.
can see. And then you come into this lake that is Dangerfield State Park, and it's just a hidden gem. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. And my wife and I went hiking out there. And I said, I've got to set something here. And that's where I've got Davey. He's a park ranger at this beautiful, wonderful place. It's everything he's ever wanted, and he's still not happy. There's still something missing. And he's by himself. His family's passed on and left him his home. So there's not really much else to do. His career is set. He's doing what he wants to do, and he really feels like there's just something missing. And I really am able to touch on the topic of family and legacy and what you really want to do in life through that. And it sets the stage for him to go on this
Hmm.
journey, and the treasure hunt becomes a catalyst for something larger, and gives him a chance to discover himself in a totally new way.
Well, Now it'd be kind of cool if one of the treasure hunts was in a lake that wasn't a lake in the Western days and is dammed up. Now it's a lake.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's so
So
many good ideas.
now you got to go. That yeah, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Because
Like as a
what do they do with the salvaging thing in there? You know, people be all freaked out.
right. One of the things I was really I really wanted to touch on in this book is, like I said, coming to terms with myself and being proud of being from East Texas. The Western genre is, I just talked about it on social media. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, this review from the New Yorker, I believe Mr. Brody, who called it the Western the most intrinsically political genre. And that always stuck with me. And I had been able to dig up that review for several years
Really?
until I just came across it. And I said, this is finally where I read it. I remember it because of the Western genre deals so importantly with the turning of the century and the founding of the United States and where we're at as a people and what civilization looks like. And you really can't tell a story in the Western genre without touching on these important tropes of who we are and how we behave and how we legislate as a country. The forming of cities from tents to buildings to downtowns, all these different things of how we're settling the country and how we're expanding. And one of the big parts is I'm glad we started this on November because it's the National Native American Heritage Month. It was a big point for me to be able to come into this and say, I have family that is both, descendants of, those who signed the Constitution with the Rutledge family that traces back to my grandfather, to my grandmother whose ancestors were on the Trail of Tears. And coming to terms with me being a product
Oh,
of,
wow.
what this culture really looks like. And, I wasn't raised in it
Hmm.
so much. I'm just out on a ranch in East Texas. And, I have to discover these
Hmm.
things for myself and figure out, my own place in this and how do I tell stories with this and come to terms with it myself. So Davy and Rose sort of represent this intrinsic chase for me to understand that and to make peace with it and actually, be proud of it. So it's something that I hope people can latch onto it. I'm a big history fan, so there's a lot of history into this. You'll get into things that are inspired through historical events and the founding of Texas and sort of this chase for the colonizers and the Native Americans and them following up on the conquistador influence from the Spanish who arrived and kind of did their explorations through it. You see all these moving pieces and you throw a little bit of gold into that and you get a good adventure out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's so much rich history in Texas, right? It's the reason why they has Six Flags over Texas. There's a reason. Uh, just to be able to do that. I mean, just just being able to finish a novel and get publish it or get it published or whatever is a monumental feat because it is not. There's a lot into it. There's so many distractions, everyday distractions to put roadblocks in the way of being able to finish it. So that's in itself remarkable. And then being able to market it, which is the whole nother enchilada. Trying to market that is always tough.
Yeah.
Just perseverance, really, if you
Yeah.
ask me.
It really
You
is.
know,
It's almost like the word count. You just keep chipping away at it. And eventually you'll get to where you need to go. And when it comes to marketing, luckily we have great people like you, Travis, who are, doing this and making an effort to reach out to other authors and provide a platform, no matter the
yep. Thank
size,
you.
to say, hey, this is important. This is worth talking about.
Oh,
So, I can't thank you enough.
well, I don't care if somebody sold one book. You might have that nugget of information that somebody can use to either way motivate them, or at least have help make maybe they can sell two books. Or so it's I don't care. I don't I'm genre agnostic because everybody's stories are kind of cool. Uh, but yeah. But thank you. Yeah, and I enjoy meeting folks like you, a fellow Texan. So
Yes, sir.
that's always nice.
It is
So again, the title is. I love the title. Say
a
it
day
again.
late and a bullet short.
Excellent. And it's going to be out into December timeframe.
Yes, sir. It publishes December 31st, and you can pre-order it now. So, it's on all the good websites, Amazon, so you can get it on Kindle or you can get a physical copy pre-ordered.
Okay.
And it's up on Goodreads now. That was actually a really cool thing to see, right? Like your first book up on
Mhm.
Goodreads. I got to claim it, got to do the fun process, and it's really surreal to see it up on Amazon and Goodreads and to be here talking about it. It's still really surreal.
Yeah, it's when you walk in some place and it's there, that's interesting. People just wanting to read it, pay money to read something that I wrote, or you wrote, or somebody wrote that they
Right.
have no idea who it is. I think that's. I mean, I kind of get a rush out of it. I guess I don't know. I'm
Oh,
old. I don't know. Who
absolutely.
knows?
And, like, I know what it means to me. I know how important the story was for me to tell. And when I'm telling somebody else to read it, I'm like,
Mhm.
if you're into thrillers or action adventure, if you're into mysteries, like it's got all these fun components in it. And I really did want it to be a
Mhm.
fun experience and kind of draw from all these things that we call the myth of the West and root it in today. So I think that there really is something for everybody to dig into because it is this outreach to say, hey, this is still alive. The myth of the West is far from dead, and we have so much still to tell from who we
Oh
are
yeah.
and the lives that we live. And I think this story is able to do a lot of
Oh
that
yeah.
and throw a few surprises in there that I don't think people are going to see coming. So my horror fans, I'm a big horror fan. We just come out of Halloween. There's some stuff in there for you. There's some stuff for I think any reader who's looking to just have a fun time.
Man, living so far out, you got to do good reconnaissance where you can take the kids in town to do some trick or treating. That's an hour drive. You better cash in on the.
We did too, and we went and we took her, and it was busier than we ever thought it was going to be. And we're like, okay, maybe she's a little too young to be out in this big of a crowd. I didn't know there's going to be such a turnout, but East Texas showed up for Halloween.
Excellent. It's great. It's a great part of the state.
Yeah, no,
Great part of the
absolutely.
state. Good fishing, good hunting. It's bunch.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
it's got a
And
lot
I'd
going
say
on. That's for sure.
one of the big
Nicholas,
things is
go ahead.
one last thing is the landscape. One of the biggest things in westerns, right, is the western authors will spend so much time just talking about the landscape. You can spend 5 pages talking about sort of
Hmm.
the West Texas view, and I wanted to really detail that out for
Hmm.
East Texas and make it its own thing. So you talked about the piney woods and all the different areas that we have in it. I really hope that I can sort of paint this picture to set East Texas on par with every other part of the state because it's really beautiful and lends itself really well to the Western genre.
Hmm. No, I agree. That's that's where the West started. It didn't end up in the West. You had to go through something
It's a
to
good
get where you
point.
wanted to go. So yeah, exactly. So well, Nicholas, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I wish you the most success with your book. And when you do your second, third, we'll have you back on.
That sounds like a plan. I'm already looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.